Couple of quick notes off the top for you loyal OHL Stories listeners who are consuming this the very day it is released. It's Don Cameron Potato Night. 25th anniversary, celebrating the man from Prince Edward Island and Darcy Harris, who was a member of the Kitchener Rangers when all of this began. Anyway, 25th anniversary, obviously, you can't do it at the rink, but you can donate online or at various grocery stores and other stores around the region of Waterloo. So everybody in Rangers Nation, make a donation in memory of Mr. Cameron. You'll remember that he was always fond of saying on Don Cameron Potato Night, because the idea was to bring bags of potatoes to the hockey game. He says, yeah, but you can bring money too, and bring the paper stuff because it's a lot lighter than a bag of potatoes. So
he was right.
He was never
he was
wrong.
right.
Not often wrong, that guy.
No. And what better way to support local as we are still knee deep in this pandemic, maybe nipple deep at this point, than supporting Don Cameron Potato Night here in Waterloo region. I don't think there's a better way to support local than someone who gave back so much locally, both through the broadcasting and through his House of Friendship allegiance and this Don Cameron Potato Night. There is no better way to give back and support locally than Don Cameron Potato Night. So make sure to do your part.
Please don't ever mention your nipples on this podcast again, if that's okay. Just a little request from me. Don't do that
There's
either.
for the viewers. Did you see the Rangers posted a video of Darcy Harris wearing his Ranger jersey out on an outdoor rink talking about Don Cameron Potato Night?
So great. And, you know,
awesome.
you talk about the House of Friendship, which, of course, is the charitable partner, and the February Potato Blitz is underway. And you mentioned local and here in the region. But listen, the Ontario Hockey League is a community. And because this is virtual, I know, especially if you're in London or Guelph, to go to KitchenerRangers.com is, you know, and I'm not trying to shill for the team. That's just a great cause. If you're an OHL fan and you want to support something that the OHL team in Kitchener is doing, and in memory, of course, of Don Cameron, just go to KitchenerRangers.com. You can make a donation right there, and you're helping out those who are food insecure with this all-important February Potato Blitz and Don Cameron Potato Night.
Always a great cause, and I'm sure you and I will make sure our donations are given properly in a way that Don would like.
One more quick note. Absolutely, paper form. One more quick note on the Waterloo region front, but this is a former Peterborough Pete, Stevie Lorentz, little Stevie. NHL debut with the Carolina Hurricanes. Was it the COVID bump, we call it, last night, because there were so many players down that Lorentz came up? But good on this kid who just worked hard. The guy worked his tail off. I believe, now I'm going off the top of my head, but I think he was a 12th rounder into the O. I think he was a 12th rounder. Anyway, the Pete's got him. He had a great career there, played his entire career with the Pete's, off to the Carolina Hurricanes, and made his NHL debut last night. Steve's cousin, Zach, started his OHL career with the Kitchener Rangers, cup of coffee in Peterborough, finished up with Plymouth. Had a pretty wicked backhand that Zach Lorentz did, but Stevie was the player, and he gets to skate in the show last night. Pretty cool.
And stick tap to his parents as well, because if you were to ask me in the 6 years I've covered this league in Kitchener, if you were to ask me maybe my top 5 players to interview, I would put him in my top 5. I think he was just such a kind individual, respective, gave good answers, thoughtful. Respective was a big one. And I think he was just a great kid. I don't have a bad thing to say about him as a player or a person. So congrats to him for sure.
All right. Our podcast guest this week is, well, speaking of the Maritimes, we got another Islander. We just talked about Don Cameron and Darcy Harris. Another Islander will be featured, played in the Eastern Conference of the Ontario Hockey League, and just a whole lot of fun, but we'll get to more of that in a bit.
Yeah, real quick. I just want to ask you, we talked a bit about the NFL last week, and I was going to ask you, Brady winning an NFC championship, does that solidify him as the greatest of all time?
Look, I think that I've been, I've hidden very poorly. Well, I don't know how you can actually argue against it. I always have, and I always will, for 2 reasons. One, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So obviously when Tom Brady and the New England Patriots are preventing some of your good teams over the past decade from making it to the Super Bowl, it's annoying. And the second thing is, and I don't have any reason for this, maybe it's just because his team was always beating my team or preventing my team from having success, but I don't like Tom Brady. I think there's something about Tom Brady that beneath the surface is going to turn out to be horrible. I don't know what he does or what he has done or if he's ever done anything. It's just this sense. I don't like the guy, but you cannot dispute. I couldn't dispute before this year, but if you were even a shred of doubt before this year, you should stop doubting because Tom Brady is without question. The only stat that you need to know is that as of Sunday, February the 7th, 6th, whenever the Super Bowl. Oh, no, that's going to be 7th, right? Yeah. Anyway, Tom Brady will have appeared in 18% of all the Super Bowls, of all of them. Just think about that for a second and then remember that he's the GOAT.
I'm with you. I shouldn't say always, more recently, I've fought the idea that he is the greatest of all time. One, because I am a New Orleans Saints fan. And two, because the New Orleans Saints' most famous quarterback, Drew Brees, has more passing yards and more completions than Tom Brady. As a quarterback, your job is to get completions and travel down the field. Yes, Tom has more touchdowns. That goes to the fact that he had so many great defenses in New England. And yes, he has more playoff wins and more Super Bowls and all that kind of stuff. But that's because he had a good team. You put Drew Brees in that scenario or Aaron Rodgers in that scenario, we're not having the same conversation about them. Is he the best quarterback at that, or is he the best person at that position? Has he had more yards and has he had more completions? That's my argument for Brees. I am losing more and more ground by the day on that argument because of what Tom Brady has done. Tom Brady has spent one season in the NFC, and Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady all have the equal amount of NFC championships. One. This dude just gets it done. It doesn't matter. Yes, he has another great defense in Tampa Bay, but the dude just gets it done. When I was watching that game, as soon as I said it last week, but I said, as soon as I saw New Orleans go down and start off the game with 2 field goals, you get in the red zone twice against Tom Brady, and you walk away with 2 field goals, you're losing that game. He's going to make you pay.
You really put it well, and are admitting what it's so hard for people that just want to hate on Tom Brady to admit, right? Because you're right. You can pick another lane, and your lane is a pretty good one, right? Complete passes, gain yards, move down the field, etc. But what you cannot overlook, and I think Aaron Rodgers put it really well when the two met in the regular season, and he's like, look, it's not really who's the better quarterback, or am I going to beat Tom Brady, or is Tom Brady going to beat me on Sunday? It's a couple of teams out there that will play one another. The quarterback, while the star, or often the star, is just one piece, one cog in the big machine. Having said that, you just look at the championship, like the success, like the AFC championships, the NFC championship now. He might, although no, he will, right? I'm sorry, Patrick. You got him in the AFC championship last year. You're not going to beat Tom in the Super Bowl. So he's going to have 7 rings.
No, he won't. Kansas City's winning that game. Kansas City is a juggernaut.
I hope so. But
they embarrassed the Bills last week.
What was the number? That was his 14th championship game, right? That he played in.
It's hard to keep track anymore. It's just
this is it. It's just and the Chiefs may have embarrassed the Bills, but those were the Bills. I'll tell you what. Even if, and I suspect, and I certainly hope that Kansas City wins because it's time to pass the torch, and Mahomes is a hell of a player, but you're not going to embarrass the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. It's just not going to happen.
Maybe not. I think that defense is a lot better than Buffalo's defense, and I know Bills fans won't like me saying that, but Tampa's defense is next level in my mind. I just think that Kansas City offense is just way too powerful. They are unbelievable to watch. It's a lot of fun to watch, that's for sure. Even if you're not a football fan, if you're just a casual football fan, or if you're not, just watch that team play and you'll become a football fan.
Can we just talk real quick again, because it's a good thing we started with Don Cameron Potato Night and Steve Lorentz, the former Pete's NHL debut, because it sounds like a football podcast right now. And
anyway, we talk about all sports during the pandemic.
I'm sure this has been talked to death, but is the outcome different? I always go back to the famous tuck rule game against Oakland way back in the first one that New England went on. And I'm like, Tom Brady got lucky to start, and he's been lucky ever since, even though he's the GOAT. But you got to admit, I've never played a down of football in my life. How does LaFleur not go for it on 4th down, 4th and goal? Even even if you don't get the touchdown, you're no worse off than you had been doing what he did. You kick the field goal, you're down by 5. You go for the touchdown, you miss, you're still down by 8. And you're still a touchdown away from, like, it was bizarre. It made no sense. And he's an NFL head coach.
Well, it's because you don't have the MVP at quarterback. Oh, wait, you do.
And doesn't that just change? Well, of course it changes everything. If you get hit in, obviously, everything. And it's a tie game. So it's 2.5 minutes. Yeah, sure. Tom, ball in his hands, 2.5 minutes to play. That's what you want. But
everyone's worst nightmare. Yeah.
Right. But still, what they did to themselves. Oh my goodness. Shot in the foot.
I got 2 more other things for you.
Okay.
Did you see Matthew Tkachuk fall on Frederik Andersen the other night?
I missed that one, but I saw the more recent
Jake Muzzin flipping the puck
game. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask you if you felt like he meant to fall on him and if you thought it was malicious, because certain fans and media were making a big deal out of it. And I didn't really think it was that big of a deal, especially as a goaltender. I think just because it was Matthew Tkachuk and I feel like he's got that reputation, I don't think it was a big deal. It was a non-play. There was a skirmish in front of the net. He fell on him. Did he mean to? Sure. It wasn't like he was trying to hurt him. It's like he kneed him in the head or in the neck. He was on his back. It wasn't a big deal.
But as long as you can recognize, because you already mentioned now, the reputation of one Mr. Matthew Tkachuk, that's what's driving all of this. So even though I haven't seen the highlight, I guarantee you he meant to do it.
Okay, fair. So, next thing I have for you, it's gaining a lot of attention online. The NWHL starting off their season in a bubble. The Toronto Six lose their first game, get shut out. Women's hockey, there's a lot of talk about pushing women's hockey and getting it up to closer anyway to where men's hockey is, getting the recognition for these ladies in the game they play. One of the people behind that push, for right or wrong, is the CEO of Barstool Sports. Barstool Sports, love him or hate him, has been successful, but also comes with a laundry list of but this. I won't get into it at all. I'm just saying, do you think the NWHL's allegiance, it's not an allegiance, do you think Barstool's support of this league is a benefit or a takeaway?
There's that old saying, no press is bad press. But in this case in particular, I don't think that's baggage you want to bring with you. I would get so far away from that. I mean, I don't think I need to document the challenges that such a relationship would present. And quite frankly, when it comes to the women's game, I got 2 words for you: Natalie Spooner. So I had the chance to be a part of a charity event where Natalie was playing. And she picked up a puck just inside her own blue line. And again, it's a charity event. You don't have even other high caliber female hockey players against you, but still, she went down that wing, over the line, pun intended, bar down. And it was enough to make you go, whoa, as a hockey fan. So I say that just for any naysayer. Yeah, of course it's a different game than the men's game that we've grown so accustomed to, but the caliber is excellent. It will make you stand up and say, whoa, every now and again. So I personally think this is something that the National Hockey League should be fully invested in, kind of like you have your NBA and your WNBA. I think that's kind of where we need to go with this. And I would stay so far away. No offense to Barstool Sports, at least not much offense, but I wouldn't do it.
I'm with you. I agree with you. I think any pub is good pub, but there's far too many negatives surrounding that brand and their, for lack of a better word, white supremacy, allegiance to their misogynistic past, to all of that stuff that you just don't want to be associated with it. I think they turned a corner a little bit to become a little more mainstream as of late. And I listen to Spit and Chicklets. I like their podcast, but that's about as far as it goes for me. I just don't think starting off a league, you don't want to be aligned with that brand in particular.
So it's worth noting, Poper, just before we introduce this week's guest, this episode is less than a week from when the Ontario Hockey League had last said, we hope to start. and they never said firmly, but February the 4th was going to be the day they were shooting for. We know that's not going to happen. A lot of players now, we're hearing about more and more of them, are jumping overseas, trying to find places to play. And listen, I've been asking myself quite often, how are the players going to, like, it's one thing to go to the gym, it's another thing to be in game action. So I'm kind of on team player in this regard. Go find a place to play where they're going to take care of you. But I just hope, gosh, do I hope that they stay healthy, obviously, while they're doing it.
That's the big thing, is the health. But I love it personally because I put myself in their skates, if you will. You are trying to make the National Hockey League, and you've identified the OHL or CHL as the best option to do so. But now with no season, you have an opportunity to go overseas, see part of the world you haven't seen, play good hockey, competitive hockey, get yourself into game shape. We're already seeing it in the National Hockey League, where the players that went overseas during the off time to play, even before the season started, even just for a couple months, are already showing better than the ones that didn't, because it's hard to emulate game scenarios and getting into game shape. And if these kids who are wanting to be drafted or even have already been drafted just want to get to that next level, I think it is just a great idea. The only issue is there's only so many spots. So a lot of the players don't have that opportunity. You got to be top of the line, or you got to have good connections or a good agent to get spots over there, whether it be Switzerland or Germany or Russia or wherever you are. I just think it's a great opportunity for a kid that age that may not have that opportunity, if not for this global pandemic.
I'm not going to lie, February 4th will pass with a little bit of a pang in my heart. I was speaking just today with Moose, Mike Reeves, the bus driver for the Kitchener Rangers, and I just said, I am at the point now where I'm missing all of this so much. I just want to go to Sudbury, man. Like, give me a road trip. Let's go. So, and I mean that for next season. Like, I will never take one of these trips, Poper, one of these bad cups of media room coffee, none of it for granted. I cannot wait to get back out there.
Let's go to Lop Lops and Sault Ste. Marie.
Yes, please.
Hey,
just watch the cover charge.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice. That would be nice.
I know. February 4th, it seems so soon, and it was something that we all had circled on our calendars, and now we just sit and wait for when that 25-game season is going to be announced, like the WHL did. I don't know if we're going to have a season, but I'm with you. Put me on a bus, send me wherever. Let's just get a season going where you and I can sit and argue about whether a penalty was a penalty or whether the fight should have happened, or give me something. You know, I'd rather argue about that than talk about Tom Brady right now.
It would have been a long bus ride, if indeed it was a bus ride, for our guest this week on OHL Stories, because he came from the Maritimes to play in the Ontario Hockey League. How did you find this guy's a stone cold beauty? Period.
He is a beauty.
Oh, he's such a beauty. You're going to love the stories for sure. And if nothing else, the accent. But how did you unearth this gem?
Well, I grew up watching him. That's how I unearthed him, which may seem.
And his jersey hangs in Kingston.
Yes, it does. It hangs in the Frontenacs arena. And I grew up going to his games, and being able to talk to him for the first time like this was great. And if this pandemic carries on and there is no season, and during the summer, if we're still doing this just to keep ourselves sane, I think we could get him back on and get some real stories out of him. Because you mentioned he started off out east in Charlottetown playing. And then, if you'll bear with me, and my apologies to any listeners overseas if I mispronounce any of these cities, but then St. John, Fredericton, Indianapolis, Kansas City, Utah, Syracuse, St. John's, Moscow Dynamo, Moscow Spartak, Toronto, Beale, Jokerit, Khabarovsk, Providence, Valpustria, Nottingham, Valpustria, Brampton, Oklahoma, Nottingham, and back to Brampton. And that's not including his NHL stops.
I'm glad that you got some European cities in there, because for a while you're talking all these American cities, and I'm like, Poper, these are not anyway.
No, they were all over. And he has been all over. Started off as a member of the Kingston Frontenacs, 187 games, 665 penalty minutes.
And those don't include the ones, as you'll hear in one of his stories, that he would have been assessed against his own
Own
team.
team.
Because he wasn't shy about that sort of thing in practice.
And he wasn't just all about the fights. 187 games. He also racked up 275 points in the Ontario Hockey League. We ran off the cities he played in throughout over a 20-year career in semi-pro/pro hockey, 1,200 games, 2,700 penalty minutes, and a certified beauty. Ladies and gentlemen, ring my ding-a-ling, David Ling. A 20-plus year career playing the game. It all started where you are right now, out east. What was it like growing up out there?
It was, the early 80s. It was not much to do besides play hockey in PEI, all of Canada. And, it was just the dream was far away. Where we didn't have a major junior team back here and at that time, and the dream was far away. We didn't realize how close it was until we did end up going away. And we had the opportunity to pick three of the three leagues in the CHL, and I always watched the OHL, and my idols played in the OHL. So it was like I always wanted to play in the OHL. I didn't want to play in the Quebec League, and the Western League was too far. So, it worked out.
Who were some of those idols that you were watching back then thinking, I want to be like them and play in that league?
Well, we used to get the games with the Oshawa Generals, so it'd be Rob Pearson, Eric Lindros, all those guys. So those were the guys, the big guys that I wanted to go to the OHL for and be there and play against people like that.
5'9", you wanted to be like Eric Lindros.
In the same league.
Yeah.
But I always thought I was 6'5" anyway, so.
Certainly played that way. What was it like playing with his brother?
I ended up playing with him in St. Mike, so I became friends with him before we ended up going to the OHL. And he was a good friend, and he didn't he wanted to be his own self. He wanted to bring up his own memories and not be Eric's brother. And I think it was tough being Eric's brother at the time.
Chris and I talk a lot about the teams in the Ontario Hockey League and how cities and fans kind of adopt them, right? Like there are players, there are guys, they play for our city. And what we forget, of course, I think a lot of the fans, a lot of the time, is that these kids come from far and wide. Some of them are playing in US markets now, but they're originally from Ontario. Some of them come in from Thunder Bay and all these different things. But you coming from across the country, really, to central Canada anyway, into the Ontario Hockey League, what was it like for a young man of that age leaving home to come to an entirely different province to play?
Well, I did go to St. Mike's the year before, and I did get, I did run into a couple issues with the team, but I also, I was in Toronto coming from PEI, and it was overwhelming, and I did get homesick the first year. And I went back into Kingston knowing that it was going to be a smaller town, and I wanted to play in the OHL and knew that I had to make some choices and leave home at an early age. And, I think I wouldn't do it any differently. I wouldn't wish my 16-year-old leaving and going to Ontario from PEI now, but so be it.
Being in Kingston back in those days, what was it like?
Well, I was coming from PEI. I enjoyed socializing. I enjoyed going out. There's three universities and the locals, and it was. I compare it to Halifax in the East Coast. It's big city with a small town feel. So I really enjoyed it. There wasn't one negative. I had ended up having great billets that I became lifelong friends with and family, whatnot. And, I hear some horror stories, and you hear more horror stories in the media, and I never saw it and never went through it and never heard about it.
What would you describe as your welcome to the OHL moment when you realized, okay, I'm in this league now?
The story I tell from my first training camp was coming from PEI. My dad wasn't there. I wasn't watching, but then I had a phone, you'd call him after the game on the phone, and I ended up my first scrimmage. We were playing a black and white game, and my first scrimmage, I got in a fight and I got pounded. And I got home and I said, "Dad, I got beat up." And he goes, "Well, just go fight the guy again tomorrow." He goes, "I can't. I'm on the same team." So we talked about it, and he said, "Do it in the warm up." So the black and white game, and I went over into the corner with the guy in my own team for the next scrimmage that beat me up the last game and pushed him against the glass and said, "Let's go." And then from that day on, internally with Kingston, they just thought I was absolutely bonkers.
I don't know if that wasn't just in Kingston.
It helped. And then it just continued on throughout the league.
A two-part question. Were they right? And who was that guy?
Not bonkers. I was an entertainer.
Ah.
I don't remember. He didn't make the team. And whenever I tried to do some research to find out the name, I never came up with a name.
Did you win that second fight?
A tie. So that's a win.
It ain't a loss, that's for sure. You said it helped. What does that mean? Like, did it cement your reputation with that team in the league? What did that do for you?
I think that the style of play that I played a game where, you know, I was in people's faces and there wasn't much that I wouldn't do. And I think part of it was entertaining, part of it was an act, part of it was what I had to do. And I think that just getting the word spread around that he'll fight his guys on his own team and he's unpredictable. I think that it traveled around the league, and I think that becoming unpredictable was very, very beneficial in my game all the way through my pro career as well. They didn't know if you were going to if you had to fight, get stuck in the back of the legs, whatever. It was just, and I didn't even know, so I couldn't help them either.
You mentioned that fight. Normally when guys in this league, rookies, they feel like they could fight, so they try it a couple times, and if they lose that fight, they tend not to do it again. But you once said that I think you lost your first 60 OHL fights. Why did you keep doing it?
Well, I call it the process. It was I learned how to get beat up, then I learned how not to get beat up, and then I learned how to throw back and be offensive and win some fights. So it was a process, and it took over 60 games. But I really had no fear. I really enjoyed, you know, I was 5'9". I always won because I was always fighting bigger guys and I was supposed to lose. So if I did lose, it was like, oh my God, you have big balls to show up. And so that helped me to go to the next one, knowing that I wasn't looked at as a failure. I was looked at as being brave and I wanted to play in the NHL, and I knew I had to fight to get there.
Obviously, we have to talk about that NHL career and so much that happened after it. You had to have a well-packed suitcase, to be sure. But you talk about this kind of game that you played, David, and the game is clearly different today for a lot of good reasons. But what do you think of the game that you see today compared to the game, especially the style that you played back when you played?
You know, I'm a believer in the game right now. I love how the game is so fast and so skilled. I got to play in three eras where, you know, I got to see the development of the game, and I got to see where it came from and where it went. And when you sit back and I look at it, I don't know how it's going to get much better, but it will. But you know, the players now coming out, the young kids at, you know, 19, 20, 21 that are making a huge impact and being the best players and the fastest players and the guys that if I'm picking a team now, I'm picking big and fast. And if I can't get big, I'm getting fast. So you have to be able to skate in the game now. And I really enjoy it. I do miss watching the battles, the one-on-one battles where you know, but you get to see some of it in the playoffs, and you get to see some body checking. And, you know, as we all know, that the issues with the brain, and I think it's for the better for the kids coming up and for the game itself, that it isn't as barbaric in a fun way, but barbaric as it was.
In your time in Kingston, first 2 years, over 250 PIMs in each year, and then in your third year, 135 points, 136 penalty minutes. If you were to score a goal or get in a fight, those Kingston fans obviously leapt to their feet. Which one did you enjoy most, bringing them to their feet, scoring a goal or getting in a fight?
I love scoring goals. I still do in rec league, and I it's just a feeling that you can't really. I love scoring. I like passing, but I like scoring a goal. But, you know, they used to ding the bell when my gloves came off in Kingston, and it was, you hear the bell and the crowd gets up, and that's a feeling in itself as well. And you're able, especially when you win the fight and you're able to raise your hands off after the fight, and that everyone's looking at you and cheering for you. It's a good feeling, but definitely a goal.
I can't help but think we're talking about a guy that's 5'9" but scrappy, likes to drop the gloves, prefers scoring but likes to drop the gloves. Two huge names associated with the city of Kingston: Don Cherry, who loved the rough stuff; Doug Gilmour, about 5'9", played a scrappy game. How much did those reputations of those two guys linger around Kingston when you were there?
Oh, they people didn't say Kingston without saying Don Cherry, Doug Gilmour, Kirk Muller. Those names came up every time that Kingston was mentioned, and it was almost like you had this reputation to upheld and continue it on. And those are three big names in hockey that that are still in the game, really, and have put a legacy on their own. And I think that Don Cherry himself, from if you say Kingston, you say Don Cherry in the same sentence.
Growing up in PEI, and you mentioned that first training camp of getting the wheels beat off you by the guy and then playing or having to fight him again. Did you ever think at that moment that a couple of years down the line, you'd be winning the Red Tilson Award for best player in the OHL and going on to win the CHL best player?
Coming from PEI, and I reflect on it when I'm talking to people, and I didn't have expectations because I was ignorant. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, I thought the NHL was too far. I get to my first camp, I get to my first year, I go, I'm not too far. And then the next year, so I didn't really look too far ahead. And because I was ignorant, because I was coming from PEI and really didn't grow up with how close the NHL was and seeing people next door neighbors making it the NHL. And, we didn't have very many guys. So I think being ignorant, I didn't look too far ahead. But I was a point of game guy my rookie year, so I knew that, or hopefully would improve. I didn't think I would win the player of the year, but I did think that I would be able to, maybe get 50 goals.
When you look back now, David, how did the OHL prepare you for the next step into the National Hockey League?
I think that it's just you're as a kid you have to mature as a player, and I think that seeing players ahead of you on the same team make it to the NHL, or see how they prepared after they came back from an 18-year-old camp or a 19-year-old camp, or made the team and came back, and just seeing it and being able to experience what other people were experiencing, and being able to use that and put it in your pocket for later. I think that helped. I think that the OHL was they prepared you to be a pro. I think it was they treated you like a pro. You practiced every day. So I think that way it was just through the experience was to help you get to the next level.
I'm sure that style of play you had was what endeared you to the fans of Kingston. I know you were a huge fan favorite up there. My parents tell me they used to sing a song of some sort in the stands when you were, whether it was scored a goal or got a fight. Do you remember that song?
Yeah, Ding-a-ling or something. It followed me around, but I also remember in Oshawa where they used to hang the rubber chicken over the boards and have my jersey on it, and so those are fun times. If you go into a away rink and you're not getting abused, I felt like I wasn't doing my job.
Was that the craziest thing in an away rink that you saw, was a rubber chicken with your jersey on it?
No, I was in Europe, and they were like burning jerseys and stuff in the crowd. So it was like, and they're in a cage. In Switzerland, they put the away crowd that are like the soccer crowd, that they put them in a cage. So they're like, and you can't. They're both teams are in cages and separated by security, and they're burning jerseys and throwing beer. Like, it's crazy.
That's normal.
Okay, so since we're touching on the European experience, we want to talk NHL obviously too, but you spent a lot of years traveling to a lot of different places with your hockey career. What was the European experience like as a Canadian-born hockey player?
it's funny because you go to one city or one league and you're like, wow, this is, it's a little different. But looking back and going through it, every league it was a good league. Every league was different. Every style of hockey was different. The closest to North America was in the Finnish league. It was more north to south with some body checking. The others were east to west and a lot of regrouping. And Russia was, fire drill with not a lot of coaching and just a lot of highly skilled players. So it was, every league had a pros and had its cons, and it gave me a better understanding of why some countries do better in the international play than others. And I think that being able to experience and see all the different styles, help my game. I mean, a lot of guys can go over and do. I was fortunate that every country I went to, I ended up doing pretty good. Where some guys come in one country they can't play in because their style doesn't fit that way, or they go to another country and their styles they fit in and they do really well. So I was able to, I think, because my game is, I never had to adapt my game to different countries because my game is slow. I wasn't a fast player. I was slower, and I brought the game to my speed with my puck handling and different ways to bring the speed down to my game and delaying. And I think that helped because I didn't have to change from country to country. I slowed it down in every country, where some guys have to, either they're east and west and they're playing a north-south game or whatnot. So it helped me going from country to country, I think.
Obviously you loved the game to play as long as you did and to go to as many different countries and whatnot. And there's a video on YouTube. I can only assume it was a mid-period scrape by the Zamboni or just before a shootout or something. And you come out, and judging by that smirk, I think you know where I'm going. You pretend like you're water skiing behind the Zamboni.
Yeah, it was in England.
What? Where did that come from?
I used to do it in practice when the Zamboni was going by and the guys were on the bench waiting for it to be done. I used to do it there, and we were actually winning 6 or 7-1 in this game, and the ref came out in between the second and third and slammed the door of the penalty box, and the glass broke. So they had to bring the Zamboni out to sweep the glass up. So he's going around, and I don't know, because I never did it in England before, and I just looked at the guy beside me. I said, "Watch this." And when I went, I think because it was such a spur of the moment, I didn't have time to think not to do it. So it went viral, so it was good.
Going back to your time in the Ontario Hockey League, and this started with the rubber chicken in Oshawa before we got into the crazy stuff you saw when you're playing in Europe in opposing rinks. When you were at the Fronts, Jens, Pete's, anyone, who was the big rival? And what did it feel like going into those rivalry games?
We had a lot of rivalry with Peterborough and North Bay, and we did my first year we did with Oshawa, but it wasn't as, the feeling of going into Peterborough and North Bay, you knew you were getting, it was going to be a war. It was going to be, and those were the games that I enjoyed the most, knowing that, you didn't know what was going to happen, or there was going to be a line brawl or a couple fights. It was the rivalry games. They call them derby games in Europe, but those were the fun games. They just add a little bit extra to everyone. So it's just the crowd's into it more. The players are into it more. That anything can erupt at any time. So those were the games that everyone enjoys, the rivalry games. Fans, players, coaches, everyone loves those games.
Was there a guy or a couple guys during your time in Kingston, and sorry for the squeaking, my puppy's got a toy here. Was there a guy or a couple of guys during your time in Kingston that were those rivalry guys that, before the game you're like, well, player X, we're playing him tonight, looks like I'm going him?
I not rivalry games, but every game I played, I knew I went down the lineup knowing which 4 or 5 guys were potential, and knowing on the ice before it happened, I knew that I had to keep an extra minute or a couple seconds out of my eye, making sure that they weren't around, and knew when they were on the ice, and knew what, if I wanted to muck it up at the time that they were on. So every game I knew which guys, and then did homework on knowing if they were left-handed or right-handed. So it was, people say it's spontaneous, but you do do your homework on the other team, or I did anyway.
For a little while, David, you were the last NHL linked to the Quebec Nordiques, having been drafted by the Nordiques organization. I know that's every player's dream. You talked about choosing the Ontario Hockey League because you didn't have great options back home in PEI. Obviously, the eye is to that next step. And we always hear that it doesn't matter what round it is, you get called by an NHL team. What was your experience when you hear that the Quebec Nordiques want you to come and play for them?
Yeah, I was given the option of going in knowing that I was going to be a late round pick if I was going to be picked at all. And my agent gave me an option. And, me and my dad and my grandfather went up, and knowing that there was a chance we were coming home empty handed. But, it was an opportunity that if it did happen, I didn't want to miss. And when it did happen and my name was called, it was, coming from PEI, it was surreal. I wanted to play in the NHL. I wanted to be drafted. I wanted to continue playing. And it was when it does happen, it's a feeling that is the best feeling at that time. If you ask me after the draft, what was the best thing that ever happened to you in hockey, that would be it. But then you play your first game, when you score your first goal, everything takes point above that. So at that time, it was a feeling that to take experience with my dad and my grandfather, it was something that you really can't, they were dying for me to go to the Leafs, being diehard Leaf fans, but, Nordiques, they were happy enough.
Did you have a bit more swagger going back to Kingston after you were drafted?
I didn't lack swagger before I got drafted, so I have to ask someone else.
Once you got to play professionally, I mean, you don a Montreal Canadiens jersey. You end up with an expansion club like Columbus. But I asked before about the welcome to the OHL moment. After that draft and you hear your name called, what's the time where you think to yourself, or you realize, oh man, like I'm in the National Hockey League here?
Well, whenever I think about my first experiences, I get called up to play with the Canadiens, and it's a morning skate, and I'm like, I don't know if I should be out here. Like these guys are pretty good, and I was so nervous. I don't think I made one pass. I bobbled every pass that I got, and I can't sleep in the afternoon. I'm almost puking during the anthem, and then as soon as the puck drops, hockey takes over, and those nerves go away, and you realize now that the game's on. So it was surreal, but a feeling that you'll never forget. I'm not a nervous guy, and I was nervous as hell. And it was Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, Montreal, Boston, coming from PEI. It was crazy. It's how much excitement and fulfilling a dream that I played that game 30 times on the street in PEI when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and raised the cup I don't know how many times, and then finally to get to play, and there wasn't many guys from the island before me to play, which so it's an experience that you can't relate to, and you can't tell people the feeling because they just don't understand.
As your family grew up big Leaf fans, what did they think of you putting on the Canadiens jersey?
Well, my dad almost told me I couldn't go. No, he was there. He was my biggest supporter. So he was a diehard Leaf fan, and he passed, but he said he'd never get to see the Leafs win the cup, and I don't know if I will or my kids will either.
Easy here. Come on, I'm still a Leafs fan.
I grew up a Red Wing fan because of Gerard Gallant, who's from PEI, but then because I've been in Ontario so much and so long, that I'm an adopted Leaf fan, and because so much about them, you hear about them on the radio, and I really am a Leaf fan now. If I had to pick a team, I'm more of a fan of the good player, of the good play, I'm as more of the team. But I am if I had to dig to one team, I would be a Leaf fan for sure. So I'm an adopted Leaf fan, not a bandwagon jumper, because there's no bandwagon to jump onto.
What was it like Mike, what was it like fast forwarding when Gerard Gallant was one of your coaches in Columbus?
Well, it's funny because I wore 17 because of him. So I wore it in minor hockey. I wore it in Kingston. And my kids wear it now, and my nephews wear it, and it's all because of Gerard Gallant. So then and now I'm friends with him and his wife and his kids. We're still friends. But Dave King was coaching the first half of the year when I got called up. Before I got called up, and he hated the way I played, and the day he got fired, Gerard Gallant took over, and I was up for a year and a half. So was there an island connection? Absolutely, because Doug McLean was the president, Jimmy Clark was assistant GM, the travel guy was from PEI, and Turk was coach, and he's from PEI. So did I get a benefit? Sure did, but so did a lot of guys. Sometimes you need that little boost.
It's funny because you Islanders tend to stick together, and rightfully so. I worked for a while, and a guy that I admired greatly in this business and in this league was Don Cameron, who was the longtime voice of the Kitchener Rangers and came from Summerside. He always said it was the Summerside of the island. And I remember running into Gerard I don't remember where we were, but then they just start going on about PEI this, and next thing you know, I'm pretty sure I was invited to Gerard's house at some point because I was just part of the conversation. But it's a tight group, eh?
Yeah, and I'm from Charlottetown, and Summerside's even tighter. Those all those guys are from Summerside, so it's a crazy small place that all these successful guys that have made it through the National Hockey League one way or the other, and it's almost like you shake your head like, how are they all from up there? But they're all PEI. There is a loyalty to the homegrown, and we do stick together and look out for each other, and we still do. I still, I'm paying it forward. I'd still reach out to the young kids that are from PEI playing, and just to say that if I'm not going to give you advice, but if you want some, feel free to call anytime, whether it's on ice, off ice, whatever.
You ever thought of doing any coaching?
I did. I get asked all the time, but I think I played too long to come out and to get the right opportunity. But I enjoy scouting the game. I really would like watching the Bantam midgets and watching them to see where one play a game with myself, thinking where will they play in the OHL and whatnot. And I like watching hockey. I watch it all the time. I like watching. I don't like watching younger than Bantam. I don't really enjoy it as much, but I like Bantam to midget where they're really skilled and you can see the development and where they're going. I do enjoy that. So scouting I would do for sure. I really enjoy it.
The pressures in the day-to-day can take its toll on some players. For a guy that played 20 plus years of pro to sit here and say that he loves the game so much that he watches all the time, and where did this love of the game and this extreme passion that you have for it come from?
I don't know. Like people make fun of me. I'll play until like a lot of guys, as soon as they retire, their skates go in the garbage and they don't put them on again. And I'll play until the doctor says I can't play anymore. Whether it's rec league or I love playing. And I think it's more the guys, the dressing room, the joking around on the ice when a guy trips and falls or shoots and misses the net, or the goalie takes one off the head and you start abusing. I that's what I miss, like in the pro, and I think that's what I'd miss the most. I do love playing, and I would go out on the ice by myself and shoot at the net still. So I do love it. I don't know why. I always did. I think that it also through the ups and downs of life, I think it gave me a place where it was a place where I got to push away all issues and be happy and play hockey.
Chris just talked about the length of that career, David, and we know, as you've already said, starting out, it's the Ontario Hockey League is sort of the destination, which would be a stepping stone to the National Hockey League, and you make it there. But it's not like you went over to Europe for a little bit and then just hung them up. You hung in there and you played a long time. Is there a point where you kind of settle in and say, okay, I did the National Hockey League thing. This is where I'm at now, and this is where I'm going to stay, and you kind of accept the fact or embrace the fact that you're going to travel country to country and keep playing this game?
Well, I knew I wanted to play, and I think that you do realize over here in North America that there is a shelf life for the up and down or the minor leaguer. There's a shelf life. You don't get to play in North America as long. The opportunity to one to keep playing and two to make more money is in Europe for those guys. And I think that the lockout in 2004 killed me in North America. I understood that, and it killed 200 other guys that were playing NHL that the year before as well. And I realized that, I got asked a bunch of times before, and I didn't want to go too early, and I didn't want to put my NHL dream on hold either. So there was times where I did think about it, and I realized when I got a big offer in Russia after the lockout, I think that's what I knew. That back then you definitely knew that when you left, you normally didn't come back.
You mentioned Russia. We got to ask, how crazy was it?
Oh, I could write a book on just Russia, but it was, there was some good.
Yeah. The money.
Yeah. And the game was really good. They were skilled. Jaeger was there one year, and it was the second best league in the world at that time. The skill level is crazy. The coaching's red rotten and terrible, but and you can see it with the way they do fire drills even over here, and it takes a long time for them to either learn the game or buy into the game. And I think that if they did have the proper coaching, that they might be the best hockey country in the world. They just lack guidance.
Did you play against Yager that year?
Oh yeah, he was in Omsk, and we played against him 5 or 6 times, and we had a game plan after the 5th game that he abused our 20-year-old D, that we had a game plan where 3 guys would just go on him, and we never beat them. He was so good.
I remember talking to Andre Benoit, former Ranger, about his time over in Russia, and he said sometimes the travel wasn't exactly first class. You rode buses in the Ontario Hockey League. Obviously, you had your time in the show. What are some of your memorable experiences getting from game to game or place to place?
Well, he wasn't lying. Like this was this was 2000s, in the 2000s, but you walk on the plane, and the plane seats like go down like dominoes like they used to. And when we first started flying in 1980, 1990s, where the ashtrays were still on the seats, and the bathrooms were steel, and the ashtray was in the bathroom. So I think the U.S. sold them their graveyard planes, and they took them and flew them. But there was one incident in Russia. We were waiting on the tarmac for 4 or 5 hours, and no one spoke English, and I'm just sitting there going, what's going on? And the stewardess walked by and gave me this was the Russian symbol for drinking, and the pilot had been caught drunk, and they were waiting to fly in another pilot. And I'm like, oh, lifted, what am I into? But fast forward, and sadly enough, the plane did go down the next year in Yugoslavia. But my first reaction was it should have happened earlier. There was so many bad planes, so many decisions that were made that shouldn't have been made. But that was Russian, and Russia's Russia. But the city I played in Khabarovsk, it's near China. Our closest game was a 5.5 hour flight. Moscow was 9 hours. So I remember Sports Illustrated doing a thing on the Vancouver Canucks and their travel, and I think ours was 7 times what they did.
Arzy and I always complain about riding the bus up to Sault Ste. Marie. I think we'll stop complaining.
No kidding.
Well, in your time in Russia, how many times were you sitting there and just thinking to yourself, what am I doing?
How many times a day?
Sure.
Because it was daily.
Yeah. Now,
if the money wasn't that good, you wouldn't stay. I'm a social guy. I wasn't a video game guy, and some guys stay in the their rooms or their apartments and play video games all day and pass the time. I couldn't. I had to be out and about, and it was tough.
I can't help but think, though, David, as you're talking about, being in this city in Russia, not far from China. We talked about the Swiss League earlier, and England. And I mean, did you ever imagine that your hockey career would take this little PE Islander, this Charlottetown boy, that far in this world?
No, and again, I didn't look too far ahead, but but the older you get, the more you appreciate these different countries. And I was in the Alps, having a beer at the top of the Alps, and then, skiing down and having a beer at the bottom of the Alps, and having a beer beside the Alps. And, but every country had its pros and was beautiful, and it was, and I think the older I got, the more I appreciate. Even Russia. When I first got to Moscow, I did the tourist thing and trolled around Moscow on the double-decker bus, learning about Stalin and Lenin and which buildings they put up, and it was very interesting for 2 weeks, and then after 2 weeks, it got really old.
Excuse me. Around the hockey circles, it's the type of camaraderie that you may not see a guy in 10 years, but you played with him a decade ago, and then you see him and you just pick up right where you left off. As someone who obviously was a good teammate guy, liked to have some fun, stuck up for teammates, played hard, how difficult is you to keep track of all the teammates you've had?
Well, social media helps a little bit, but you do. But then again, as you know, Chris, there's only 4 or 5 guys you really like on each team. You liked them at the rink, but you wouldn't hang out with them. So there's not really that many. But no, but even those guys you run into and you tell stories. You don't have to go too deep. But hockey stories are hockey stories, and remembering a season with the guys and stories that happened on the ice when you were buddies. And as soon as you get to the rink, you're all buddies and you're all family and you all stick up for one another. You leave the rink and you may not really care for much, but when I run into them, especially the older I get, the more time to tell stories and reflect on your career and who you played with and where are they now and what they're doing. And he could have played in the NHL now if he was, if he was in this era. Those stories are still fun to get into over a beer.
Okay,
DEI, weird, eh? An Islander talking about a beer.
So since this door is now wide open, and Chris made reference to it earlier, his games of the week, which were apparently to watch his uncle, but the 4 or 5 guys
I think I had 4 that night.
4 fights?
4 goals, I think, maybe. I think the last one went from the corner over Belinsky. Was Belinsky a goalie in Kitchener? Yeah,
Belinsky was for sure.
Yeah, I think it went over his shoulder, 4th one. I think that was game of the week in Kitchener, one of them.
So what about this Steve Parsons guy? You must have known him a little bit. Is he one of the 4 or 5 guys that you liked on your team?
Yeah, Pars was 19, 20 when I first started, and he was a guy I liked to go to have a beer, and we connected, and I ended up playing against him a couple of years in pro, and he was a guy that liked having fun and liked to laugh and liked to tell stories. And people might say that he didn't like making prank jokes, but he was, if he wasn't doing it, he had his mouth in someone's ear to make them do it.
What were some of those pranks? I need some Christmas stories here, Linger.
No, some of them I can't even say on video.
That first NHL game you talked about, Montreal, Boston, and once they dropped the puck, the nerves disappeared. Who were you on the ice with?
First shift, and there's proof to it. The next day in the Gazette, I was in behind the net, and it was me hitting Ray Bourque, and it looks like I crush him, but if you play the video, I fall down after, and he goes up into the offensive zone. So the picture made me look good.
You mentioned Ray Bourque. Go back to the OHL. How tough was it as a guy of smaller stature going into like a place like Windsor and taking on Ed Jovanovski?
I ended up it wasn't new to me. I played tier 2 in PEI, I still would say one of the toughest leagues, even throughout major junior, one of the toughest leagues that I've ever played in. And we didn't have visors on. We didn't, my coach was Forby Kennedy, who was original 6, small, tough guy that, made me fight in practice to learn how to do it. And, maybe he should have been a better teacher and I would have won more early, but I was fighting my own team in practice at 15, 16 years old. It was just a way, not everyone was doing it, but he had instilled in me that if you're 5'9" and you want to play away, you're going to have to learn how to fight. So, I got it early and it helped me when I did move into the OHL and get into these big guys. But my first year and even looking back into the guys that I fought my first couple of years there was like, oh my God, like there were some big guys that I had to fight or didn't have to fight. I wanted to fight, but I did have ways to I remember Matt Johnson in Peterborough. He kept coming at me, and I said, I can't fight you, Matty. I said, you're too big. And soon as I said that and his eyes left my eyes, I dropped my gloves and smacked him. And then, I got the edge and so no one sees it, but that was, kind of jumped him.
That's one name. Who are some of the tougher guys you got to fight?
Bonvie, Stojanov and Guelph and Johnson. And first 2 years I fought everybody. And, I remember Dave LeMay, he wasn't even, he didn't end up being but he was playing in, might have been Cornwall. And he beat me up. I dropped my gloves, beat me up, went pretty good, put my head down, and he hit me with a couple uppercuts. The fight was over. We went in the penalty box. I said, come on, you got to fight me again. He said, sure. Dropped the gloves, going pretty good, dropped my head, couple uppercuts, wins. Get back in the penalty box. I said, you got to fight me one more time. So penalty was over. We left our gloves and helmet in the penalty box. Stepped out, going pretty good, put my head down, and hit me with 3 uppercuts. Fight was over. Lost all 3.
Linger, you're supposed to learn your lesson.
I know, but I didn't.
Go ahead,
Poper.
I was just going to say, obviously, you mentioned that after being drafted, that might have been the highlight of your career. Where would getting your jersey retired by the Kingston Frontenacs, seeing that 17 Ling up there next to, I'm sure, a friend of yours, Kelly Corpse?
Yeah, Kelly was, not only a friend, but a line mate and a guy that helped me, get as many points as I did. But, that when you get an honor like that in any team or any city where they think that you've showed them enough to get your jersey retired is an honor in itself. And I really feel Kingston was second home. I grew up there. I did a lot of my teenage years in Kingston, and I do think it was a second home, and it did for that it was even a bigger honor just to feel like it was a place that I do call home, that and I still go back all the time, and it was a real honor watching it. Your family's there watching the jersey up in the thing, and I go back sometimes now and see the jersey, or anytime someone goes into the rink, they send me a picture of my jersey up there. So it's an honor that I probably at the time didn't think was as big as when you reflect back on your career and you realize that that could be in the top 5 moments of my career.
I'll have you know that when I ask my uncle Steve Parson about his top moment of his career, he says getting Corpse and Ling's jersey retired in Kingston because he feels he was part of that.
Yeah, he got 30, 35 goals out of it. Yeah.
Linger, that the next time we're in Kingston, we get back to playing some hockey, we're going to snap that picture and send it to you as a guest on this podcast now, right?
Yep, for sure.
Okay.
But just bringing up Pars, we used to give the puck to him wide, and he could go wide and cut to the net like no one. I'd even playing pro, no one would he go wide and cut into the net with like no one could do it like he did.
Well, we played rec against them a couple of years ago, and I'm a goalie. My brother's a forward. And I think the cutting to the net has gotten the best of them over the years, I think. No goals. I'll leave it at that. No goals.
It wasn't the goaltending either.
Good goalie or bad player?
Bad player. I hadn't played in probably 2 or 3 years, and we go, and it's just a beer rec game, like beers in the dressing room before, beers after, and so on. I went out for the warm-up and just taking warm-up shots. I skated over to the boards. I'm like, my legs, I can't feel my legs. Just warm up. I was terrible. So out of shape.
When did you start thinking about the transition to life after hockey?
So a lot of guys have to do it. Sometimes they wake up the next day and realize that the career's over. I was back in Ontario, and I was contemplating a couple times that, this could be it, or I did end up moving back to PEI and worked with the government for 6 months. And I actually reached out to the East Coast League team in Brampton and said, "You guys need a guy. Like I need to get back. I'm missing something." So, and they did. So I ended up going back and playing. And then the next year, come September, I didn't play, and you're getting a job and you're thinking about it. And then January comes and they want you back. So it almost took me 4-year process of being able to slowly get it in my brain that it could come to an end. And I'm still not retired. I just don't have a team to play on.
If a call came, would you lace them up? Do you need an agent, or over the years are you just your own agent?
I'm game shape. I'm game shape.
That's great. Over the years, did you become your own agent because of all the connections you made, or did you still employ somebody to find a team for you?
No, when I was in Europe, I did have an agent, and but I also in Europe it was kind of different because I didn't really sign anything. So anyone that came with an offer that I felt was reasonable got to be my agent. So, and that's how it worked. But then in East Coast League, when I came back here, I didn't need an agent. It was just the people that you knew. Or Colin Chalk, I played with in Kingston, was coaching a couple of years, and he was a rookie when I was a 19-year-old. So it was kind of like, I got to go and listen to this guy now after I abused him as a rookie. But, we were buddies, and it was fun.
As a
difficult
guy,
was that? I'm sure it's happened a couple. Sorry, Mike. I'm sure it's happened a couple times where the coach is maybe even a decade younger than you.
Yeah, and it was being older and knowing how it works. There was everyone knew I was older. Everyone knew that I probably had more experience, but I never put the coach in a position where I looked like I was smarter or talking down to him. I always respected that he was the coach and I was the player, and I think that's in hockey. That's what you have to do. Like, you can't disrespect the coach no matter what the reason was. And I think that after the meeting that I didn't agree with, I'd go into the office and have a discussion with him and give my 2 cents there, but not in front of guys or not in front of. So you're trying to be a part of, for me to come back and play when I was older was to help the younger guys and kind of show them what mentor them throughout with questions that they had or more experiences. I knew what the outcome was if you did this or you did that. Like, there wasn't much that I didn't do or experience that I didn't know that that might not be what you want to do, because this is what's going to happen to you.
So speaking of that, as a guy that's gone through what you've gone through, the entire process from Ontario Hockey League to National Hockey League to all those years in Europe to transitioning out to, being a professional and working in financial services like you do today, what would your advice be to somebody in the Ontario Hockey League today, David?
It's funny because I do look at it, the schooling part of staying in. There was a lot of guys when I did play in the OHL, and I know it's different a little bit now, that school wasn't as important. The team made you believe that it was, but if you didn't want to go, you didn't go. I was brought up where if I didn't go, I didn't play. Didn't matter where I was playing. And so I had to get my high school and I had to get my marks. But I do think that these guys that are coming out that, don't have a clear-cut shot at the NHL and are going to be up and down in the East Coast of the AHL, that they should take even the Canadian university route and get an education before, because it's really hard to come out of the game with nothing. You don't have, you're usually older, you usually have kids, or and you can't go back to school for 4 years, even though when you were 20, you said, I'll go to school when I'm done. Where life changes and you don't have 4 years to take off and make no money and go to school. So I think that if my kids played major junior, they would be going to school, and they would, before they ended up going to pro, unless it was the NHL, they'd be going to Canadian University, because you guys have seen it, and the East Coast Universities League is, really, really good hockey, and a lot of guys go have pretty good pro careers after. Joel Ward, that is an exception, but there's a lot of guys that go on and have good American League and East Coast League careers in Europe from Canadian college. And I think that, especially in this day and age, I think a lot of the mental health in hockey is due to coming out of the game with no real education and no real foundation to be successful and try to be financially secure.
Is the hopes for you to have your kids play major junior? Are they into sports?
They did. I have two boys. They both play hockey, and they're good. They love it, but I don't think. But the smiles on their face on how much they love the game is what I like watching. They get asked if they want daddy's help, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But they love playing.
Wonder where they got that love of the game from.
Yeah.
Do you have
I guess it's contagious.
Do you have a trophy room or anything that you show? You play them old YouTube clips. You mentioned a picture before that was in the Gazette after your game in Montreal, body checking Ray Bork.
I don't have to. I don't have to. My kids find it all. That's why you have to be so careful now, because they Google your name and everything's popping up, and so you have to be politically correct a lot of times on air.
How do you think your career would have changed in Kingston if there was social media?
No comment.
That's the safest answer. Oh, Linger, this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, no, I had fun talking. And anytime you want to do it again, feel free.